All right, we're now into chapter 6 material. So that in Schoology was all about data analysis. So any questions from 6.1 dealing with frequency and histograms? Frequency and histograms. Nothing 6.1. Frequency tables. What is a histogram? Yeah. What kind of graph? It's like a bar graph. What's different about a histogram than a bar graph? Bar graphs can go either way, but a histogram could go either way, I guess. We just normally don't. What has to be very specific about a histogram?
Is it like each bar represents a group of values, not just one?
Hold on, go. What did you say?
I said, is it because each value on a histogram, like each bar represents a group of values, not just one value?
Yeah, that as well. So notice bar graphs, right? Take a gander. Versus histograms. What's one thing you notice about the bars in the histogram versus the bar graph? All right, so the biggest thing with data analysis, I want to make sure we understand. The bars in the bar, or the bars in the histogram don't have gaps. The bars in a bar graph can have gaps because they're representing totally different things. But the bars in a histogram have no gaps because they are representing ranges of values that are right up against each other. So this is anybody falling between 100 and 150. This is anybody between 150 and 200. Anyone between 200 and 250. Here, not number ranges, representing US, India, UK, New Zealand. That's the big difference. Histograms are used to represent numerical ranges. And then the frequency within that numerical range. I like that image. I'm going to keep that image up. Is it jammed or out of staples? You guys broke it! Guys, when you can't staple your papers, blame Jenny and Ava.
Whoa. That's hard.
Well, you broke it. Will you go see if there's any staples anywhere else, like in Goldring's room or over in Cullinan and Estes? Just see if we can borrow from anyone. I should have a secondary stapler in here somewhere, but I think somebody took it. I have a black one that I keep in here too, but I think somebody stole it.
Yeah, they're there.
Oh, yeah, yay. Alright, so 6.1, we're all good? Frequency tables, histograms, feeling fine? 6.2, central tendency and dispersion. Talking about mean, median, mode, range, interquartile range, all that sort of stuff. So when you talk about which measure describes it best, please check your homework on this one. You might think mean, and they might say like average. Well, mean and average are the same thing. You might think mode, where they would say average because of a certain reason, or vice versa. Average might be bad, whereas mode might be better. Yeah.
So when you are like trying to describe like the central tendency, like which one is best to describe it?
Yeah.
I don't even know where to begin.
So measures of central tendency are your mean, median, and mode. It's your averages.
Yeah.
So your mean's your average, median's your middle, mode's your most occurring. Right? So when we look at mean, median, mode for these situations, take a picture. So, like in number 1, what's the mode in number 1?
15.
What is it? 15, because mode means most occurring, right? So, my mode is 15. My median, I'd have to have them in order, but then it'd be 8, 12, 15, 15, 20. So,
I think it's the median.
Yeah, so my median would also be 15. So far my mode and my median are the same. To find my average, I'd add them all up. So 30, 50, 60, 70 divided by 5. Straight up 14.
Yeah. So then, like, two of them are the same, one was only one less. So, like, how do you know which one?
Any of them are pretty good there. It's just your justification. So you could say, really, I hate using mode unless it occurs a lot compared to the other ones. Because just saying use mode because it occurred twice as opposed to the other ones occurred once, that's a really lame reason. Like if you said, I'm going to use 15 because it occurred 5 times where everything else only occurred once, that'd be pretty valid. I almost always rely on the average unless there's outliers. So some really low values or some really high values because those will skew my average. So here you could either trust your median because it's the middle of all data and the middle is going to be pretty safe, or the average, and the average is better than the median most normally because think about what median actually tells you, the dead center of like there's 10 over here, there's 10 over there. My 10 over here could be right here, and my 10 on the other side could range this entire space. But that middle is the middle number, not the middle of the data. Average takes like the middle of the data. So yeah, you just gotta be careful. So a couple of these might have a bigger difference than that one. So here we have a mode of 79, a median of also 79. So then compare that to what average do you get? Because again, your median and your mode are the same in your second one.
So if three of them are the same, you just go with the other one?
No, not necessarily. You have to look at like which one makes sense in the data. So if your mean and your median are the same, and then your average is like let's say your average here somehow ended up to be like 70. This wouldn't happen, but let's say your average ended up to be 72. You've got values of like 80 and 79 and 79, and you've got some higher values. So maybe you then realize like, my average got pulled down. Like say you had like a 50 in here that pulled the average down. You can say, well, the average isn't really that good because of that outlier. It messed up my average. So instead of using that, let's use my median. Because maybe when I compare my median and my average is too low, but my median is higher up and it's closer to where I actually want it. So you just have to look at it and make your judgment call, which is kind of hard because it is a judgment call. It's not like right or wrong, black or white. It's like you have to think about it. Other questions from those four? Central tendency? All right. Other on this homework. There's a really easy way to do this, by the way. I don't have any issues on these. You can manipulate this. I'm not going to do it out here unless people want me to, but you can manipulate this to kind of make a rule for how you determine the x when you know what the average is and you know what all of the other values are. Range is just max minus min. Mean is just average. Any other questions? 6-2. Sorry, no, that was 6-2, wasn't it? Yeah, histogram was that. 6-3. Box and whiskers. So a box and whisker plot, as you've seen from the videos and as you know, is used to describe and show the quartiles of the data, which the quartiles are used to split the data into equally sized, like 25% of the data sections. They will not actually be equally sized, but they will contain 25% of the data. How wide or how narrow they are shows you how concentrated the data is. The wider that a quartile is, the more spread out your data is. The tighter a quartile is, the narrower it is, tells you that your data is more highly concentrated. Any questions 1 through 6? Finding those quartiles, the maximum, all that stuff. Be careful with finding quartiles of odd versus even. Remember that sometimes you have to make up a number that isn't there. Sometimes you have to not use a number that is there. So be careful to watch through the lesson videos. I'm not going to review stuff that you guys should have watched through because I'm not going to waste your time. But if you have questions, I'm happy to go through any of these. So it's always hard for me to tell who just isn't having any struggles versus who maybe didn't do their homework versus like who did this last year. Any questions? Making boxing with your thoughts. Now, you've probably been doing this in 7th grade. We start basic in 7th grade. Or like math 7. Alright, I'll move on. 6-4. Scatter plots and trend lines. 8.
I just had it. It's just like
Comment.
general question.
Okay.
So down there it said use a graphing calculator, and on the notes you didn't have us do that, but I don't have a graphing calculator, so I wasn't sure what to do.
So you can always make things manually. The reason that we use a graphing calculator is we eventually have it analyze the scatter plot and figure out our function for us.
Okay.
So you don't necessarily have to use a graphing calculator, but the other option is Desmos. So Desmos is your graphing calculator, right? So it is, aside from the fact that it's not a calculator, it's a utility, it is your graphing calculator. So if I made my years since 1960. So at years since 1960, my first year would be 0. Then 1, 2, or no, sorry. Then 10, 20, 30, 40, 45, and 50. So notice that weird, interesting blip here with 2005. So then I can plug in my Y values of 97, 06, 10, 652, 10, 798, 10, 847, do I go over in the notes how to use your graphing calculator to get the line?
No.
We do more of that in math too. We
You
might.
just told us to do it how I told you on my computer.
Well, so once we have the table in our calculator, those values are way too high for us to see. This is one of the problems that we can't adjust our window. So there's our first dot, and then there's our other dots. If we could adjust our window here, we could widen out the x-axis and shrink down the y-axis, which is where the TI is nice. But then our line of best fit is just the average line through them. So if we're able, I don't think I can change my window settings. No. Ooh, yeah, I can. X-axis 0, might as well. Nah, we'll go negative 10. And y-axis, how far did we go? Like 50? Let's go to 55. Now, I can pretty well see where my line of best fit can go. Now I can play with some things, like trying to figure out the slope of my change in y from here to here. Notice that as I click on points, now it's going to give me those values. Or maybe what about my slope from here to here? Like first point to that point, or that point to this point. Can I run it through there? What about if I come slightly higher than this point? In your calculator, and you can Google this, you do this in math too, but there's a way that once you put the points in the calculator, you just tell it like generate function, and it generates your best average function. And it just spits out the slope and the y-intercept. Or if it's non-linear, you can tell it, hey, give me the best function that fits that's non-linear. And then it'll spit you out like an exponential or quadratic.
So I have a general question. Is there a way to make like histograms on a, I mean not histograms, boxing with their plots on like a graphing calculator?
Yeah, but it's pretty We don't normally do that. You can. We just don't do it very often. Yeah.
Why does it get cold then hot in this building?
Huh.
Oh,
So,
it's very
what do
Yeah,
you
that's
want
what
it colder or do you want it hotter?
Well, no, because it gets cold.
If you
and
want
it's
it
hot.
colder, this is what's really sad. We can trick things. If I turn this lamp on and get it hot in this corner, this is where my thermostat is, it will trick that into thinking my room is warm, and it will cool it down. We literally have to do this sometimes. So our building was renovated in the 80s, but built like back in the 50s or 60s or something. It's an old building, and there's baffles in the HVAC, things that filter the hot air, cold air, or just how much like circulation air versus air conditioning air. So it mixes, right? And that mix gets goofed up because the baffle can't turn correctly. So when it's too hot in here, it's mixing too much circulation air and not enough cold air. When it gets cold, the baffle has now unstuck and got stuck the other way. Too much cold air, not enough. It's just poor system.
Why don't you fix the system?
Because that's out of my job realm, and they try all the time. Trust me, these guys can tell you about Mrs. Goldring lighting up our building principal every time we say there's hot lava flowing out of our vents. They come out here often, but they fix it, and then like a month later, it's just broken again. So you should go tell your parents that they should go complain, and then maybe something will get done.
I'm a court.
If something will be.
Yeah.
Well, then you just wear a sweatshirt. Right? All right, moving on. So that was
Yeah.
6-4. All right, anything else from 6-4? Anything else from 6-4? All right, 6-5. Yeah.
For the marginal, for number 5, do you want that as a decimal, or is it fine as a
Either. Depending on the situation, sometimes I say fractions are better and sometimes I say decimals are better. If there's no decimal that can approximate it accurately and the fraction does, like say 1/3 versus 0.3, 0.3 is not an accurate representation of 1/3. Even 0.3 with a repetend over it is not an exact representation. Then a fraction would be better. But if it's like 1/2 versus 0.5, totally toss up to you.
Then do you want us to simplify our fractions or use them?
I'll always simplify if possible. Yeah, if you have like 12/16 or like, yeah, always reduce down if you can.
Okay.
Other questions? 6-5. Going once. Going twice. All right. In just under 2 hours, there we are, chapter 5, chapter 6. So, at this point, hopefully you should be ready to take the assessments. If you turn in your notes and homeworks, it can either be all notes and then all homeworks, or note, homework. I don't care how you turn it in. I just need to have those turned in so I can check that you actually did them and that you did them well. Practices, again, 50% of them done, so choose evens or odds. You do not have to do every single question. Yeah, at this point, you can work on whatever you need to work on. So if you need to do more lesson work, you can do that. I can probably scrounge up some headphones, but most of us should probably, hopefully, be taking some assessments.
Wait, so we don't have to do every question these days?
Did you watch the videos from class last week?
I was in
So, reminder, I'm going to leave this up. I'm going to leave this recording for a second. Here's a reminder for everyone. Yo, I need your eyes for a second. In Schoology, when you go to materials, notice that there's now a folder called Face-to-Face Class Videos and corresponding notes. In that folder, dated, so this is everything from last summer. You want to see the class videos from last summer? There's last summer. So, right in our folder though, last week, we ended up with these different videos from last week. I stopped the video more frequently. So last week's class videos are right here. So if you missed class, you should probably watch this to see what you missed. This week's class videos will be right here in a folder labeled 61317. So anybody who missed class today can go back and watch the videos, or if you think you missed any information or you want to go see anything again, all of these things will be posted. Also, if you're bored and you want to see what I'm doing for some of my grad work over summer and see how big of a nerd I am, my YouTube channel has lots of new activity where I'm setting up things for next year. Like, how long will it take you to plant hostas? So, hostas, they're plants. So, I'm making all kinds of like math problem videos over the summer.
Do you not
So,
know what a plant is?
circumference math. So, talking about bike tire. I don't think I get out my bike in this one. Oh, this one. You can see my bike in this one. Hey, look, my bike. Alright, so remember that all class videos get posted on Schoology. We did it in class. It will exist forever. On that note, I'm going to end this class video. If you need one-on-one help, come see me. If you need to turn notes and lessons up in, do that. Get the chapter tests I have right up here, so you need to get those from me. Aside from that, you are able to leave whenever you'd like. But, FYI, once I get all the papers turned in, and I get all my grading caught up, if you do not have the assessment tests or the notes or whatever done up through chapter 6, those grades in Schoology will turn into zeros. Right now, they're ungraded. They do not affect your current grade, but to stay on pace with the schedule, if you don't have chapter 5 and 6 turned in today, you're behind. So those will turn into zeros temporarily. They'll get replaced with whatever grade once you turn it in, but just to kind of light a fire under your butt, if you don't turn this in, it's a 0. So, to stay on schedule, that will happen this week once I get everything graded. Thank you very much. Let me know if you need